while Norman kindly kind of put my slides on the screens, I wanted to say two things. First, to Achilles, I need to introduce you to a couple of friends of mine, both artists but also creators, who are like very much like forward thinking, and I think that what you showed up is like extremely interesting. And actually, what you will see in a couple of minutes is probably like more boring for some of you. So I will kind of front run myself a little bit with the slides so that you don't wait for the slides to show up before listening to what I say. So my background is basically, traditional finance for a decade. Then I had the chance to work for an amazing company that some of you might know, which is Ledger, so security crypto company, between 16 and 22. And I left 2 years ago to actually do two things. One thing which is, actually, yes, the second slide is great. Should I go there and just...
You have to click here.
Just click here, that's me. And so, yeah, and basically I had the chance to, do what I like, and what I like is, building a bridge between traditional art and digital art. And the way I decided to position myself is with a very financial investment-driven approach, which might not be the cup of tea of everybody in this room, and I totally respect that. But that's a way for me to actually try to contribute a little bit to push forward this amazing, digital art world that is relatively young, relatively, small, even though we have a full room there, so it looks like it's like growing. And yeah, again, that's the way I go. So the rest is a bit boring, but we'll see while we progress in the presentation that I will provide you with a lot of data points. So again, I don't blame you if you start to look at your phone or whatever. And again, because Grail Capital is an investment fund, so the way we approach things is that we have a very highly culturally driven approach. So we tend to believe that culture brings value, and the cultural value translates into economical value. And actually, for those of you who've been studying, history of art from a financial and economical standpoint, it's always interesting to see how the cultural value precedes the economical value, and not the opposite. Which is interesting because in the FT first phase that we had in 2021, it was the opposite. So the economical value preceded the cultural value somehow. Anyway, so we'll start with a couple of very interesting figures, and actually I will ask some questions. Some of you might know. We know this artwork that is relatively famous and relatively expensive. It's 450 million. Do you know what is the size of the traditional art world? I mean, contemporary and modern art right now, just for the sake of the question. Do you have any guess, James? Because you're into. You don't know? Do you have any kind of guesstimate?
Half a trillion.
Half a trillion?
More than a trillion.
More than a trillion?
1
Okay.
trillion.
Sorry?
10 trillion.
Okay, so we start the auction. So at the bottom of this one. Sorry, what?
10.
10? Okay, 10 is a bit.
1.7.
Whoa, precise. Actually, you are not far. You're just in the right price, this game in the US. You are probably the closest. This is basically 2.2 trillion. And wait, because it's only the value of art and collectibles that is owned by high net worth individuals. And that's not me coming with these figures, it's Deloitte. And they actually do this report every year where they estimate the kind of market size of art and collectibles. Again, only the one that is owned by high net worth individuals. We're not talking about stuff that are in museums and stuff. So the reason why I start with that is because it's a big number and it's a small number. It's a big number because 2.2 is actually the size of a GDP of certain relatively big countries in Europe. And at the same time, it's small compared to other asset classes like bonds or stocks or real estate or whatever. Anyway, I wanted to start with that. I also wanted to show that contemporary art as an asset class is an asset class. And it's kind of monitored by certain kind of players, and they kind of always come with some data points, which is like the annual return that you own if you bought some contemporary art from a certain basket of artists like Warhol, Basquiat, and whatever, for a certain amount of time. So that's just for the sake of it. And then let me tell you, while we have this amazing slide with a lot of colors, let me tell you my story as a collector myself. So I started collecting street art when I was relatively young in 2005 and 6. And basically the reason why I collected street art was because I had no background in art. I didn't come from a family that brought me to museums or galleries. And street art was very democratic because street art was everywhere, available in the street. The only requirement was a bit of curiosity and the ability to look up and look for Invaders, Banksy, Shepard Fairey, so Obey Giant, and a couple of people like that. And because I was curious and because I was lucky, I was in the right city at the moment. I was between Paris, London, and New York, where basically those artists were starting to be there, and some of them started to be famous. So I started to collecting street art. And then from street art, I started collecting photography because one way to capture the essence of street art was through photography. And with photography, started collecting that and then started to have a couple of problems. Inherent problem to physical, which is the scarcity, the provenance, all those things that started to be bothering me a bit. And fast forward, when I started discovering NFT as a technological medium, actually it started to kind of solve a lot of my problems. So that's how I moved from collecting physical pieces to digital art pieces. There's also a very basic problem, which as I started becoming a big collector, I started to collect a bit too much, and I had simply a storage capacity problem because I didn't have any space on my wall anymore, and I didn't have a bigger storage place big enough to get everything. Anyway, so that's the digital art superiority from my perspective as a medium of capturing the art essence and everything that Achilles said earlier, which is interesting. It doesn't mean that I don't like physical art. It doesn't mean that it will disappear. It just means that for me, it's a very interesting new medium of creativity and capturing the essence of culture and art. Okay, quick. Because I was at Ledger and because I was in this fourth revolution, which is token on blockchain with Bitcoin and the rest of the tokens for the actual revolution of money and financial assets. For me, the fifth revolution is art and culture, for the internet of everything, and the tokenization of everything, and definitely NFT will play a role in that. It's only a role that is technological for now, but I tend to believe that it will go way, way beyond that, because for me, it's also a cultural revolution and a cultural approach that is changing things. So just like we had those guys on the top, like Warhol, Basquiat, and Banksy, that changed a bit the statu quo in the curatorial world and the art world, like for some of them 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. I tend to believe that we have a new generation of artists that are currently changing the statu quo as well. So whether it's Greg Calderon, Snowflow with Squiggle, the CryptoPunks, Xcopy, and many others, and we have one in this room tonight with Mike Dryas, but he will tell you more later on. So I really believe it's both a technological revolution, but also a cultural revolution, at least from my perspective. And it started only recently, because we are only in 24, and for me, the market of digital art on blockchain, so NFT, is only in its 4 years. Because the birth of the market is March 21, with the sales of people, at Christie's for 69.3 million. That's really what started the market as such. It doesn't mean that art before was not important or existing. It simply means that there was no market for real before. And this is obviously a piece, for those of you who can't really read it, of Refik Anadol at the MoMA, that also contributed a lot in the expansion and visibility of digital art as a cultural thing that is noticeable enough because it's in one of the biggest museums in the world. And now we get to the point of today's presentation, which is more the financial approach of the digital art market on blockchain. So again, some of you will discover certain things, and some of you will be surprised maybe. So I started with the market cap. You remember that I told you that the art and collectible owned by high net worth is 2.2 trillion. So that's 2,200 billion USD. The total market cap of art on block and collectible on blockchain is right now 5.6 billion. So that's very, very small compared to the art and collectible and the traditional art world. And because, as Akide said, right now it's kind of stored on certain blockchain. So imagine that the canvas that is used is kind of a blockchain. The largest canvas makers for now is Ethereum, by a relatively large portion with 4.5 billion. The second one is Bitcoin with 600 million, and the third one is Solana with 400 million. And then you have other like Base and other kind of layer 1, layer 2, Avalanche, whatever. If you look at the volumes of NFTs traded for the past 2 years, let's say, to simplify, Ethereum is still like the largest. You can see the spike of certain new blockchain at some point that trigger a lot of attention or stuff like that, but Ethereum is still the largest by quite a large magnitude. So that's also another way to see the market. There is no Bitcoin, by the way, it's only EVM, but Bitcoin has not, is basically similarly to that. So you have this kind of spike in yellow by Blast and stuff like that, but that's the same right now. From a market perspective now, we said that, because we came here with 4.5 billion for Ethereum, we are tracking that with Grail Capital, and we created a kind of what we call a synthetic index of the market for the past 3 years and a half now, coming again from March 21, which is there with people, so going from like 200 million, less 100 million maybe, not even sure. And you basically see the spike in value coming from 100 million to 15 billion. So 150x in 3-4 months. You can see the summer of JPEG that we called, July and August, with the first peak. A little bit of pullback, what we call in traditional finance and chart analysis. And then the kind of top of the market, which is like in March 22, with 16.6 billion USD total market cap on Ethereum again, because again, the largest part of the market has been there. And then you see the dump, and the relatively like bad, bearish market that we've been through since then. And obviously the little spike that you see is just the last month, because we've been experiencing a relatively large bounce back for the past month. I don't know how am I on the time, Norman?
I don't know either, to be honest.
Okay, well, let's continue. And if you just cut the mic if I'm staying for too long. 5 minutes, okay. So this is again the 4.5 billion market of Ethereum, and this is the kind of taxonomy, which is not perfect, by the way, so don't blame me for that. We try to evangelize, investment managers, even, believe it or not, but museums are interested as well to understand, how the market is breakdown between different segments. So we decided to come with a very basic approach, which is, there is the collectibles, so the CryptoPunk, the Bored Ape, the Pudgy Penguins, all those PFP things that have been relatively important in the development of the NFT world. You have the generative art, which is definitely the second largest both in terms of size and in terms of cultural approach. There is the AI art, with Refik Anadol, Niceantes, Oli and Matt work, again, that you will have the chance to listen to in a couple of minutes. And you've got everything that we call others, so both the one-on-ones, the digital painting, the glitch with XOP, everything that you cannot really put into a single category. So that's the rest of the market, but that's the kind of breakdown that we come up with. And basically, all those categories have been experiencing a relatively big bounce in the month of November, so current month, both because the price in ETH went up, but also because of the price of ETH went up. So we had a double effect, and that's how we ended up having a relatively impressive performance for the month of November. And if you look at this, so basically that's the price of the CryptoPunk, which is one of the blue chip for an investment standpoint. It goes from 26 ETH at the end of October, and yesterday, when I did the screenshot, it was almost 38. So that's pretty good performance. And again, it's only ETH. If you apply to that the ETH to USD conversion, it's actually a 70% increase in the last month for this collection, which is one of the blue chip. So basically what we will quickly see, because I really have to rush, basically everything you were saying, you need to multiply by 1.5 or 1.6, because it's the data points of the last month, so end of October, and I couldn't make everything. But just to, again, provide you with a kind of overview of the market. So again, the collectibles, so CryptoPunks are first, Bored Ape are second, Pudgy Penguins are third. And we had obviously a relatively downward performance for the past 2 years, without any surprise, because it was the more heated segment of the market 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it has suffered a lot, also because the price was difficult to justify. The second kind of segment is the generative art, and as you can see as well, so the autoglyph, the squiggle, the fidenza, the ringers, all those great collections also suffered quite a bit, and they posted roughly the same performance, which is on average 70 to 80% decrease. By the way, when we show the figures on the table, it's always what we call the top 10. So that's the top 10 collections that we showcase. So that's the winner, but just like for the S&P, those are the Apple, the Microsoft, the Palantir, the Tesla kind of equivalent in the digital art world. And usually when the market goes down, the leaders are suffering, but the smaller are suffering even more. So you can guess that for generative art, if you see Chromie Squiggle doing on a year-to-date basis minus 53% at the end of October, that means that the rest of the market has probably done very, very badly, so like minus 70 to 90%. Last but not least, the AI art, which is very interesting for me. We have a relatively young segment there, and it has been extremely interesting in terms of performance and in terms of cultural value, and obviously you have a lot of great artworks there, so actually we need to add Matt and Ollie's collection, Infinite Images, in the next repo, so more to come on that. To conclude, I think, obviously I'm biased, but I tend to believe that for the past 2 years I spent a lot of time, discussing with investors, collectors, museums, foundations from the traditional art world. And it's funny because usually when I talk to them, I'm always the weird guy, and what I say seems to be so futuristic that they don't connect with it at all. So actually, I think I've got an idea. I should bring Achilles, because what he said is amazing, but it's so futuristic compared to that actually it will help me, because I put Achilles first, and then I come and I look, actually, well, it makes sense. Because it's very difficult for people to understand the future. A lot of people have trouble understanding what is the future. And for me, it's very refreshing to see people who are way ahead of me, because that means that maybe one day we'll be right. And coming back with a very financial approach, we have very bold estimates and scenarios at Grail Capital. So we tend to believe that this market, that is again 5.6 billion right now as we speak, digital art market on blockchains, we believe that it will go to 20 billion by 26. 100 billion by 2030, and potentially 1 trillion by 250. And just with 1 trillion by 2050, which is 26 years from now, actually, I must say, I even believe I'm conservative, because if we compare to right now art and collectibles, physical owned by high net worth, again, they are just 2.3 trillion. So 1 is actually very small, I tend to believe. And the key takeaways are just recapitulating what I just said, and just basically coming with the kind of the level of expectation we have for this asset class. But again, don't be mistaken. We are not only looking at digital art on blockchain as an asset class. We believe it is a very important cultural change and movement. And just like music, who's been totally digitalized for the past 25 years, I think it will change also the way we interact with art and culture. And blockchain, will contribute highly to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean-Michel. Very insightful. Awesome. Are there some questions in the audience about the digital art market? No questions. Too many numbers.
How can I exit it? Do you have a fund or?
The question is how can one exit?
Yes. No, good question. So first you can follow what we are not providing everything. How could I say that? But a lot of things that are there are available on our newsletter. So Grail Capital, so grailcap.substack.com. And then regarding investments, we are because it's a very I should have started by that because Gary Gensler would put me in jail soon. But basically, this is a very, very new, alternative, risky asset class from an investment standpoint. So usually what we only accept qualified investors and professional investors, and the kind of minimum ticket that we ask is 50 to 100k euro equivalent, because we don't want retail investors at all, and that's the way that we select. And basically we raise investment vehicles that are anything between 1 to 3 million every year. We raise the capital and we build the collection, and all the investors are co-shareholders of the collection. And after 5 years or 6 years, depending if we apply a certain amount of time in addition, so 5 years, say, we will be selling the collection to a collector, through an auction, to museums, and hopefully with a capital gain, and then investors will get their money back.
Any other questions? There's one back there. I think we need to pass or just take the question, I'll repeat it.
This may be a bit difficult to answer, but how would you say how was the bear market for the scene in general? Like, how do you think the development would have maybe changed if the bear market would have happened at all, or would have maybe been a bit less brutal? How did this change?
So the question was, how did the bear market affect the digital art market, the asset class? And if it wasn't there, what would you think where we would stand?
But I think it impacted a lot, the creators, or the artists, basically, because, and it's the first cycle, by the way. From the graphic that we showed, it's the first cycle. So we had nothing, big, down. So that's the first cycle. And for me, the analogy is very, very close to the Nasdaq. When the Nasdaq went up in 99 and 2000, and then it went down for 2-3 years. So we are just in the first cycle right now. But the problem is that, artists have suffered a lot, because all of a sudden the market was so down that nobody wanted to collect anymore, nobody wanted to buy anymore. So that's the most. Oh, now the questions.
Now there's some more questions. Wow, look at you guys. Okay, yes.
Just a quick question.
That's right.
No, you're good. Do you track how many artists in general are joining the scene? Just interesting metric to know.
Technically, we could, because the good thing is that everything is public. So everything is, with all the, the Dune analytics, everything is tracked. There's everything available. We could do that, but to answer your question indirectly, we've seen a very limited number of new artists joining the digital art scene for the past 6 months or 12 months, because there is no demand, or almost no demand.
Okay, one more question here.
And by the way, don't hesitate to come after the presentation, because probably now that you've got a lot of questions, we won't be able to answer all of them.
This might sound like a dumb question, but why is the digital art market correlating so much with the crypto market? Wouldn't we expect digital art to have a stable value over time while crypto is crashing and hyping and stuff like this? I mean, I kind of know, I could answer it myself, but I would love to.
No, it's not a dumb question at all. And actually, I think beyond the correlation with the crypto, it's correlated with risk on, risk off assets. Simply like that. And actually, if you look at the traditional art market, it is down 50% for the past 2 years, both in price and in volume. So, for me, an asset class so young, so alternative, so risky, being down 70 or 80%, actually is pretty good. But it's very correlated with risk, risk approach by everybody.
Any just like one more short one?
No, it's really short. Just wondering, do you ever consider the effects of like engagement algorithms in social media and the impact to an artist's livelihood, like the discoverability and literally maintaining themselves up? Because also we all know that many of us go through loads of like burnouts. Like I was very active from 2021 until 22 when I had a big burnout, and then a posting vanished. Then suddenly going from selling to not selling, and I'm seeing this happening to all of our friends too.
Yeah.
So there is a bear market in these things. So what are your thoughts to do with that? And if you have any thoughts, solutions that you propose, how to mitigate
It will be
this complex issue?
it's a complex issue, and it will be a very long answer, so I will try to summarize. I think because it was a new medium, and all of a sudden it gave a lot of artists ability to sell artworks, on the internet, but with no intermediary. It provided an explosion of supply, and for a while demand could catch up with the supply, so a lot of artists coming and minting. And then as soon as the market started to go down, obviously there was too much supply for too less demand, and obviously, when supply exceeds demand, the price goes down a lot. But unfortunately, it's not the quality of the artist, it's not the time that you spend and that artists are spending on social medias and communicating about their art.
The question was more to do with visibility within the algorithm of these
Oh, okay, so that's a more like, okay, so
tied to.
I think it has some impact, but we didn't kind of we were not able to really grasp that. We know that algorithm in Instagram and Twitter changed a lot, and it might have impacted the visibility and the number of engagement and impression that one post has. But because probably the Twitter algorithm before was fake or like manipulated, it's very difficult to assess that. But that's a very good question.
All right, guys. So one last question from my side. So Jean-Michel is obviously fundraising for his fund with like many private banks. I don't know what private banks,
Family offices.
Rich people.
Yeah, wealthy people, yes.
So what was the funniest thing that you got asked by this audience ever when you started to convince them from the digital art market? Or like, what is a funny anecdote?
It's not.
How is this world seeing what we are doing?
Okay. Is there any journalist here or not? Because if okay.
We are recording.
Okay, we're recording. Okay, thank you. So it's not an investor, but it's actually the former Minister of Digital for France, who's now the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And he went to an exhibition of digital art, and there were journalists all around. And even though I spent like 10 minutes explaining him, where the digital art is, which is on the blockchain, you need to have a signal. He made a joke, not so sure if it was a joke. He took a screen and was making as if it was running, and he said, "Hey, hi, basically stealing your artwork," which is basically the kind of anecdote I could share with you, and might provide you with a bit of way of how
physical right-click save, right?
Yeah, worse than that actually, at least, and also it's kind of challenging my appreciation of the way those guys are looking at things in politics, generally speaking. But that's just for the out of the record.
Awesome, thanks so much for these insights, Jean-Michel.